Mark, thanks a lot for joining us on Morning News today.
Well, thanks for your interest. Yeah.
It's just 25 years into our democracy. Obviously, it was a significant moment to commemorate in our country's history, and perhaps this is the reason why the South African Post Office decided to release something of the significance.
Yeah, I think the Post Office plays quite a strategic role in the democratization process, over the years. And I'll highlight a couple of things. We've already installed over 1 million DTT, for the new digital television, for subsidized television for those who can't afford it. So that's entrenching people's right to information. Since 1994, we've registered 7 million new addresses of people that would previously couldn't have voted, and we now pay social grants to 11 million people, which gives them their human right to economic dignity. And so the Post Office over the years has always played a role, in a central role between government and its citizens, as a footprint that is probably for most people the nearest bit of formal economy that they get in touch with. Yeah.
I mean, as any 25-year-old as well with the South African Post Office, I'm sure you've also experienced, and it's had over the years its own fair share of challenges, and also being able to mitigate some of those strides and being able to reform, so as to say. Would you say that, therefore, because the Post Office is able to reform itself, that it gives some kind of hope to South Africa's democracy, which many may say is maturing, but still has got a long way to go?
Yeah, I think we do have a long way to go, and so does the Post Office have a long way to go. But, as we start coming together with common purpose, and as we start, thinking more about the future, if you look at our strategy for 2030, it is far away from the old Post Office that we all grew up in. It is technologically driven, it is multi-channel, it is, digital postal services, it's e-commerce. I'm off to Turkey on Wednesday, where we are engaging with ministers of other postal services around the world, and we'll be appointed as the e-commerce hub for Africa as the Post Office. So we seek to be resilient, we're relevant, and the Post Office in the olden days was a sort of protected monopoly. It's not the case anymore. There's competition out there, and so we have to stand our ground.
And there's options. And there's something called email, and there's the internet, which has then provided individuals with instant sort of gratification, especially where the answering of messaging is concerned. Not necessarily that you have to wait a week or 2 days before you actually get your message.
Yeah, but it's still quite cool. I'll tell you what, I brought you a present.
You brought me a present. Because I love presents. Make me surprised.
One of the things you can't change is, so this is what the stamp collectors would get, which is a first-day cover of the stamp. Okay? There are only 100,000 of those, and here's the actual real stamp for you.
So there are 100,000 of these.
That will be printed.
So now there are 99,999. I just want to.
And this is the stamp. It's a fabulous little stamp. It costs 32 rand. You can use it, roughly 32 rand, for post on registered mail. It's a registered mail stamp, and you could actually post that. And so
I can actually send a post with that.
You absolutely can. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so that is. It depicts someone waving a flag looking out into the future over the ocean. And we of all the organizations I've ever worked for, South African Post Office is a very proudly South African organization. We serve millions and millions of people in our country, and we hope to be eventually the conduit between government and its people.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at being that conduit as well, it just means that being able to maintain and be able to also mitigate the needs of especially the rural communities as well as the peri-urban areas. And obviously not necessarily looking at those urban areas, because as you mentioned, the urban areas have got their options, right? And
they've got options, but we actually have a legal obligation to have a presence in, it's called the Universal Postal Services obligation, where we are required by law to have a presence per so many number of our citizens. So we are the only, we have a footprint of about 2,500 points of representation, which is 5 times more than any bank, which is, it's a commercially irreplaceable footprint. You could not vote if we weren't able to confirm your address. You couldn't open a bank account if you want to be featured. You need to have an address, and we are the providers of addresses. We even now provide addresses,
social grant addresses as well,
and social grant addresses, and we see ourselves becoming involved in bridging the economic divide as Postbank finally gets its license, and we can start looking at new lending models to fund the growth of small companies. And in e-commerce, our focus is on SMMEs exporting.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into the e-commerce space. I mean, obviously, it's not a conversation that we can have indefinitely one day, but especially look at the digitization and the way in which the world is moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. Where does the post office stand with that? But we're going to leave our conversation here for the moment. Mark, I'm going to have to learn this. Do we still lick stamps?
Of course you do.
Do you still
it's
lick
part
the
of
stamp?
the deal, man.
Well, I'm going to try and lick the stamp as I say goodbye to Mark. He's the CEO of the South African Post Office.